The gavel came down with the sound of my dreams shattering. "Mr. Torres," Judge Harrison said, adjusting her glasses as she looked down at me from the bench, "your wife is claiming that Green Valley Landscaping is marital property built during your 7-year marriage. She's requesting 50% ownership." I sat in the defendant's chair, my hands clenched so tight my knuckles had gone white. Across the courtroom, my ex-wife Stephanie looked like she'd already won the lottery. Her lawyer, some shark in a $1,000 suit, was practically smirking. "Your Honor," Stephanie's lawyer began, "my client supported Mr. Torres throughout the building of this so-called business. She handled the books, answered phones, and managed scheduling while he was out playing in the dirt. Without her administrative support, there would be no Green Valley Landscaping." Stephanie nodded dramatically. "I sacrificed my own career to help build what we have. I deserve half of everything." The judge turned to me. "Mr. Torres, how do you respond to these claims?" I looked at my court-appointed attorney, a tired-looking public defender who'd met me 30 minutes before the hearing. He gave me a helpless shrug. We both knew I couldn't afford to fight this properly. "Your Honor," I said, standing up slowly, "Green Valley Landscaping isn't what my wife thinks it is." "Oh please," Stephanie interrupted with a laugh that echoed off the courtroom walls. "Your Honor, my husband is just a gardener who got lucky. He cuts grass and plants flowers." I turned his little hobby into an actual business. The judge frowned at the interruption. "Mrs. Torres, please let your husband speak." "Thank you, Your Honor. The truth is, Stephanie never understood what Green Valley actually does. She thinks I'm just a landscaper because that's what I let her think." Stephanie's lawyer leaned forward. "Your Honor, Mr. Torres is clearly trying to minimize the value of the business to avoid paying my client what she's owed." "Actually," I said, reaching into my jacket pocket, "I think there's someone here who can explain better than I can." That's when Miguel stood up from the back row of the courtroom. Miguel Vasquez was 62 years old, built like a concrete block, and wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Stephanie made in 3 months. His silver hair was slicked back, and his dark eyes held the kind of confidence that comes from owning half of downtown. "Your Honor," Miguel said in his deep, accented voice as he walked toward the front of the courtroom, "May I approach?" Judge Harrison looked confused. "And you are?" "Miguel Vasquez, owner of Vasquez Construction and Development. I believe I can shed some light on the true nature of Green Valley Landscaping." Stephanie's face went white. I could practically hear her brain trying to process what was happening. "Mr. Vasquez," the judge said, "what is your relationship to this case?" Miguel smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. "For the past 3 years, I have been working as an employee of Green Valley Landscaping." The courtroom went dead silent. Stephanie's lawyer recovered first. "Your Honor, that's impossible. Vasquez Construction is one of the largest development companies in the state. Mr. Vasquez couldn't possibly be working for a small landscaping company." And yet, Miguel said, pulling out a folder thick with documents, "Here is my employment contract with Green Valley Landscaping, dated 3 years ago. Here are my pay stubs, though I should mention, I work for free. Here are tax documents showing Green Valley as my primary employer." He handed the documents to the bailiff, who passed them to the judge. Judge Harrison examined the papers, her eyebrows climbing higher with each page. "Mr. Vasquez, this says you're employed as a consultant?" "That's correct, Your Honor, though the title doesn't really capture what we do." Stephanie finally found her voice. "This is ridiculous. Danny, tell them this is ridiculous." But I wasn't Danny anymore. I was Daniel Torres, and I was tired of pretending to be smaller than I was. "Your Honor," I said, "perhaps I should explain what Green Valley Landscaping actually does." "Please do, Mr. Torres." I walked to the center of the courtroom, feeling every eye on me. For 7 years, I'd let Stephanie believe I was just her blue-collar husband who played in the dirt for a living. It was easier that way. Less complicated. 3 years ago, Miguel came to me with a problem. His construction company was building luxury developments, but the landscaping subcontractors kept failing. Missed deadlines, cost overruns, poor quality work. It was costing him millions. Miguel nodded. Daniel, had done some work on my personal property, a complete redesign of my estate grounds. The work was extraordinary. Not just landscaping, but environmental engineering, water management, ecosystem design. I'd never seen anything like it. "So you offered me a partnership," I continued. Green Valley would become the exclusive landscaping contractor for all Vasquez construction projects. But more than that, we'd be integrated into the design phase. Every new development, every commercial project, every luxury estate. The judge was reading through Miguel's documents. Mr. Torres, these contracts. Green Valley has handled the landscaping for Oakwood Estates, Riverside Commons, the new City Hall complex. 47 projects in 3 years, Miguel confirmed. Total contract value of $230 million. Stephanie's jaw literally dropped. But, I said, looking directly at my wife, Stephanie was never involved in any of it. What do you mean? Judge Harrison asked. Green Valley Landscaping has 2 divisions. The residential division, which Stephanie knows about, that's the small jobs, the suburban lawns, the flower beds. That division makes about $60,000 a year. It's basically a front. Miguel smiled. The commercial division is where the real work happens. Large-scale environmental projects, corporate campuses, municipal contracts. That division generates approximately $15 million annually. The courtroom erupted. Stephanie was screaming at her lawyer. Her lawyer was frantically shuffling through papers. The judge was banging her gavel for order. Your Honor, Stephanie's lawyer finally shouted over the chaos. If this is true, then Mrs. Torres was deliberately deceived about the value of marital assets. Actually, Miguel said calmly, Mrs. Torres was never involved in the commercial division because she never qualified for the security clearance. Security clearance? The judge asked. I nodded. 12 of our projects have been for military installations or government facilities. Everyone involved needs federal background checks. Stephanie's credit history and some previous legal issues made her ineligible. Stephanie's face went from white to red. What legal issues? I've never been arrested. No, I agreed, but you've been investigated 3 times for insurance fraud. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Miguel opened another folder. Your Honor, 3 years ago, when Green Valley was being vetted for our first government contract, Mrs. Torres' background check revealed ongoing investigations by the Insurance Commission, fraudulent claims on auto accidents, property damage that couldn't be verified, medical claims that didn't match hospital records. That's not, Stephanie stammered. The investigations are ongoing, I said quietly, which is why I could never involve you in the business side of Green Valley. Every major client required security clearances that you couldn't obtain. Judge Harrison was staring at the documents in front of her. Mr. Torres, are you saying your wife has been completely unaware of the scope of your business for 3 years? Not completely unaware, willfully ignorant. Stephanie stood up, knocking over her chair. You son of a bitch. You let me think you were some struggling landscaper. I let you think what you wanted to think. Every night I came home and tried to tell you about my day, you'd roll your eyes and say you didn't want to hear about dirt and plants. When Miguel invited us to dinner at his house, you said you didn't want to socialize with the help. Miguel's expression darkened. I remember that conversation, Mrs. Torres. You told Daniel he should stop associating with those people if he wanted to move up in the world. Your Honor, Stephanie's lawyer said desperately, regardless of Mrs. Torres' knowledge or involvement, Green Valley was built during the marriage using marital resources. Actually, I interrupted, it wasn't. I pulled out my own folder, much thicker than Miguel's. Your Honor, Green Valley Landscaping was incorporated 6 months before I married Stephanie. The initial investment came from my savings and a loan from my father. All equipment purchases, all vehicle purchases, all office expenses for the first 2 years came from pre-marital assets or business loans in my name only. But the growth during the marriage, Stephanie's lawyer tried again, came from my partnership with Miguel, I finished, which was funded entirely by business profits and Miguel's investment. Stephanie never contributed a single dollar to Green Valley's commercial operations. Miguel nodded. I have a 10% ownership stake in Green Valley, purchased with my own capital 3 years ago. The remaining 90% belongs to Daniel, acquired before his marriage. Judge Harrison was quiet for a long time, reading through documents. Finally, she looked up. Mrs. Torres, did you file joint tax returns during your marriage? Yes, of course. And those returns showed your husband's income as approximately $60,000 annually from Green Valley Landscaping? Yes, that's right. Mr. Torres, the judge continued, where did the other $14 million in annual revenue go? Into business accounts that were never commingled with marital assets. Green Valley pays me a salary of $60,000 annually for tax purposes. The profits are reinvested in equipment, expansion, and business development. So the landscaping business that Mrs. Torres managed is effectively a completely separate company. Same name, different operations. She managed the small residential jobs. I managed the multi-million-dollar commercial contracts. Stephanie was looking around the courtroom like a trapped animal. This is insane. You can't just hide money from your wife. I didn't hide anything, I said calmly. I offered to show you the books dozens of times. You always said you didn't want to be bothered with boring business stuff. Miguel pulled out his phone and showed it to the judge. Your Honor, I have a recording from last Christmas. Mrs. Torres was complaining to her friends about being married to a simple gardener who would never amount to anything. You recorded me? You were in my house, insulting my business partner and friend. I record all gatherings for security purposes. The judge held up her hand for silence. Mr. Torres, I'm going to ask you directly, what is the current value of Green Valley Landscaping? I looked at Miguel. He nodded. Based on our current contracts and projected growth, I said approximately $42 million. Stephanie made a sound like she was choking. However, I continued, that value is contingent on maintaining our current partnerships and contracts. Most of our agreements include morality clauses and background check requirements for all ownership stakeholders. Judge Harrison was beginning to understand, meaning that if Mrs. Torres were to become a partner, we'd lose every government contract, every military installation project, and probably half our commercial clients, Miguel confirmed. The business would be worth maybe $3 million instead of $42 million. Stephanie's lawyer was frantically whispering to her, but she pushed him away. Fine, she screamed. I don't want your stupid business anyway. I'll take half of everything else. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. Your Honor, I said, there isn't anything else. What do you mean? Our house is mortgaged to fund business equipment. Our cars are company vehicles. Our savings account has $800 in it. Everything valuable is tied up in Green Valley. But the lifestyle, Stephanie was sputtering. The vacations, the nice restaurants, the shopping. All business expenses. Client entertainment, networking events, industry conferences. You were never paying attention to why we were doing those things. Miguel stood up again. Your Honor, I think I can resolve this situation. How? I'd like to make Mrs. Torres an offer. He turned to face Stephanie directly. Green Valley Landscaping has a small residential division that Mrs. Torres has been managing. It's worth approximately $200,000. Equipment, client contracts, and goodwill. I'll buy out that division for $300,000 cash today. Stephanie's eyes lit up. $300,000. In exchange, Miguel continued, you sign away all claims to Green Valley's commercial operations and you agree to a non-disclosure agreement about everything you've learned here today. Why? The judge asked. Miguel's smile was razor sharp. Because Mrs. Torres is about to discover that her husband is one of the most successful environmental contractors in the Southeast. When the news gets out, she'll be besieged by reporters, business magazines, and investors. The non-disclosure agreement protects Green Valley's trade secrets and client relationships. And if I don't sign, Stephanie asked, then you can fight for half of a business that will be worthless within 6 months once our clients learn of the ongoing fraud investigations. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of Stephanie's breathing. Her lawyer leaned over and whispered urgently in her ear. She listened, nodded, then looked at me with pure hatred. Fine. I'll take the $300,000. Judge Harrison looked at me. Mr. Torres, do you agree to this arrangement? I thought about 7 years of marriage. 7 years of being treated like I was stupid, like I was beneath her, like I was lucky she'd settle for a simple gardener. 7 years of watching her spend money we didn't have while complaining that I didn't make enough. I agree, Your Honor, but I have one additional condition. Which is? Stephanie has to publicly acknowledge that she was never involved in building Green Valley's commercial success. No interviews, no social media posts, no telling friends she helped build a $40 million business. Danny, it's Daniel, and it's non-negotiable. She looked around the courtroom, realizing that everyone was staring at her. The woman who just discovered her simple gardener husband was worth more money than she could spend in 3 lifetimes. Fine, she whispered. The papers were signed that afternoon. Stephanie walked out of the courthouse with a check for $300,000, more money than she ever seen at one time in her life. But I could see in her eyes that she knew she'd just lost something worth infinitely more. Miguel and I walked to the parking garage together. He was quiet until we reached our cars. You know, he said finally, I never understood why you didn't tell her. About the business. About who you really are. About what you've built. I looked back at the courthouse. Because I needed to know who she really was. And now I do. Any regrets? I thought about it. 7 years of marriage. 7 years of pretending to be smaller than I was. 7 years of listening to someone I loved tell me I'd never amount to anything. Just one, I said finally. What's that? I should have done this 3 years ago. Miguel laughed, the first genuinely happy sound I'd heard all day. Well, you're free now. What's next for Green Valley? I pulled out my phone and showed him the email I'd received that morning. A contract proposal from the State Highway Department, $200 million over 5 years for environmental restoration along the new interstate expansion. We're going to need more equipment, I said. And more employees? Definitely, but this time, I'm not hiring anyone who thinks landscaping is just about making things look pretty. As I drove home, to the house that was now entirely mine, I thought about the look on Stephanie's face when Miguel stood up. The shock, the confusion, the slow dawning realization that she'd been married to someone she never bothered to understand. 7 years she complained about being married to a simple gardener. 7 years she'd rolled her eyes when I tried to tell her about my work. 7 years she'd made me feel small while I was building something extraordinary. But here's the thing about gardening, real gardening, the kind I do. It's not about making things pretty. It's about understanding complex systems, managing resources, creating sustainable growth from the ground up. Stephanie never understood that. She saw dirt and plants and manual labor. She never saw the environmental engineering, the water management systems, the soil chemistry, the ecosystem design. She never saw that I wasn't just a gardener. I was building something that would last long after she was gone. And now finally, I could stop pretending to be anything less than what I was. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Miguel. Daniel, I forgot to mention something in court today. What's that? That highway contract you showed me. I put in a good word for you with the transportation commissioner. Her name's Maria Santos. Should I know that name? Miguel chuckled. She's my daughter, and she's been looking for a landscaping contractor who understands that roads are ecosystems, not just pavement. I sat in my car, looking at my house, and started laughing. Miguel? Yes. I think I'm going to like being divorced. 3 months later, Green Valley Landscaping was featured on the cover of Commercial Contractor magazine. The headline read, The Secret Garden. How one man built a multi-million-dollar empire while everyone thought he was just cutting grass. The article included a quote from Miguel. Daniel Torres is the most brilliant environmental contractor I've ever worked with. He sees possibilities where others see problems. There was no quote from my ex-wife. The non-disclosure agreement she'd signed made sure of that. But I heard through mutual friends that she'd moved to Florida and was telling everyone she met about her ex-husband, the multimillionaire landscaper she'd discovered and helped build into success. Some people never learn. As for me, I'm sitting in my new office, a converted barn on 50 acres outside the city, planning our next project. It's a complete environmental restoration of a 1,000-acre former mining site. The contract is worth $60 million over 4 years. My employee Miguel is here too, in his usual spot at the conference table, reviewing blueprints and arguing with me about soil pH levels and watershed management. We've been partners for 3 years now, but he still insists on being listed as an employee for tax purposes. Says it keeps things interesting. Daniel, he said this morning, looking up from an environmental impact report, do you ever wonder what would have happened if Stephanie had actually paid attention to what you were doing? I considered the question while I reviewed the contracts spread across my desk. 47 completed projects. $230 million in total contracts. A business worth more than I'd ever dreamed possible. No, I said finally, because then I never would have learned the most important lesson. Which is, Never let anyone convince you that you're smaller than you are. And never trust someone who's more interested in what you appear to be than who you actually are. Miguel nodded approvingly. That's good business advice. It's good life advice. My phone buzzed with a text message. A photo from my new girlfriend, Sarah. She's a civil engineer I met at an industry conference. The photo showed the community garden we designed together for her neighborhood, 6 months after planting. The text read, "It's beautiful. Thank you for showing me that landscapes can be art." I smiled and showed Miguel the photo. "She gets it," he said. Yes, she does. Outside my office window, I could see the test plots where we developed new sustainable landscaping techniques. Experimental soil mixtures, drought-resistant plant communities, water retention systems that could revolutionize commercial development. It looks like a garden, but it's really a laboratory. Stephanie would have seen flowers and dirt. Sarah sees innovation and possibility. That's the difference between someone who loves what you appear to be and someone who loves what you actually are. And that difference, it turns out, is worth about $42 million. Give or take a few million.